Hello and welcome from me, Dr. Pete Melville-Shreeve. This work's been presented on behalf of my co-authors Sarah Cottrell, Alex Newman and David Butler. And this study was around the impact of ultra-low flush toilets on sewerage networks and water usage. So the aim of the project was to gather evidence from a large-scale pilot in which we've installed over 100 ultra-low flush toilets. And for those of you not familiar with the Propel toilet, it is a 1.5 litre flush rather than a 4 or 6 litre flush, or a 9 litre flush for one of the older toilets, and it uses air to mobilise flows down into the pan. More details available on the website. So challenges for this project, well, there were installation practicalities that we had to overcome to get over 100 toilets installed, and really we were looking at overcoming any perceived risks of reduced sewer flows and increased sewer blockage. And there was an extensive facilitation stage in order to mobilise things within the estates department. We also had to come up with a way to monitor water savings across more than 100 different appliances. And we weren't sure at the beginning of the project what the maintenance needs would be for these toilets and how heavily they'd be used and abused by the customers on campus. And it's not very easy to control a sewer catchment, so it's a living laboratory project, and one can't really put up a sign on your toilet door to get people to flush when you want. So it's not appropriate to put up something like this so that you can control the campus. You have to make do with the users as they stand, and as you'll see in a bit of the data in a moment, it's some quite interesting signals. So why pilot the 1.5 litre toilet? Well, Propel had received a grant in order to explore this, and they wanted to explore the anecdotal challenge that old drainage networks need high toilet flush volumes. Also, the University of Exeter's estates team know they have circa £1 million per annum water bill and are working hard to reduce their overall water footprint. How? Well, it's about replacing existing toilets, getting them concentrated in one zone, designing a monitoring strategy to evaluate the flows into the sewers, and then using things like CCTV surveys, lift and look surveys, blockage reports in order to qualitatively assess what's happening downstream. So we decided against hiring anyone with GIS skills and did a colour-coded survey of the campus, having surveyed the 55 buildings. And the question is, how many toilets are there in 55 buildings? Well, they're general office use, none of them were residential halls, and we ended up with 668 toilets in the asset database. The different types were recorded. We also picked up information about taps and sinks and urinals, and we generated our nice non-GIS map to help us look into the campus, so we could explore places where the most toilets were concentrated and begin looking at it from there. So a quadrant of the campus was selected and 119 toilets were replaced, all using overnight work so as not to disrupt campus users, because campus is usually open 365 days a year. And we were trying to get as focused an impact as possible on the drainage network. And so for these buildings in this quadrant of the campus, all of the drainage comes downhill to a single location. So we were looking to affect that as significantly as possible. So here's a drainage plan for the campus. The pink buildings are the ones that we've intervened in, and there's another pink building bottom right not shown behind the toilet there. But we had a baseline CCTV survey for this part of campus from March 2018. And that told us what the drainage conditions were like prior to install. Completed the 119 toilet installations, and then went on to commission the monitoring system in March 2019. And due to unfortunate events associated with the pandemic, our customers were essentially uninstalled in March 2020, as we'll see in the demand data shortly. So to monitor water demand, we did install a series of traditional water meters in one building, but essentially we put in 119 flush counters installed in the back of each washroom. And these all feed through to some Internet of Things enabled boxes, which are passing data up to our server. And in the Harrison building, which is the engineering department, we also installed digital flow meters. So we're picking up digital flow of mains water to each toilet to give us some verification of the flushes. And everything was captured at 1 minute time step, so we've got high resolution data. Now, we know the inflows because we've got the demand, so we can do CCTV on a month-by-month basis in order to explore what's happening in the downstream sewers. And then we also received reports from campus services every time there was some form of blockage in the drainage network. This one was caused by one of the infamous blue rolls, which is used for drying your hands. And the CCTV surveys were conducted, glamorous job by JJ and some of the ProPlayer guys and a drainage engineer, Dan, over the course of the project. So it's always done by the same crew, so any observations they were making were consistent throughout the project. So in terms of water demand, well, we had about a 6% data loss across the project, which is deemed to be quite good for this amount of sort of sensors. And across 6 months of the data, which is reported in the paper associated for this conference, in the full paper, we've got 231,000 flushes, giving an annual water saving of around £12,000 projected, which is 100 or so pounds per toilet installed. And here I've managed to get hold of an updated water demand curve. And as you can see, over the course of the year 2019 March through to March 2020, we can pick out things like the Christmas period here, extremely low demand for the toilets. We can pick out the summertime period where again there's a low but steady demand, office users only, no students in this region. We've then got classic term time where it's up and down weekly, and we can also spot the lockdown kicking off here. So looking at lockdown briefly, we can see that on the February the 28th, 2020, Boris came out and instructed us to wash our hands more often. And pink data was the week before that, and this is the litres of water used per flush in a men's washroom. And we can see that the week after, across every day of the week, we've all done as we were told by Boris and washed our hands more often, apart from Saturdays. Tend to ignore government policies on Saturdays, as shown here. So in terms of drainage, we've got a bunch of these drainage cards, and I won't dig into the detail, but essentially we've got a traffic light system looking upstream, downstream, and at the manhole across each of the drainage surveys that were conducted. And CCTVs were used to look up and downstream. And where we flag something, we generally find that this is a displaced joint in this instance, and so it keeps flagging throughout each of the surveys. They'll be grey if we weren't able to actually access that zone. So we've got real drainage, and there are issues observed throughout the drainage system, cracked pipes, failed joints, root ingress. And in two locations where there was essentially poured downstream drains, some small flush tanks were put in to keep flows mobilised. And hand drying blue roll was also phased out. So that's the blue roll you normally dry your hands with, or you might dry your hands. That was being found in all of the drainage network and kept causing blockages at the beginning of the study, particularly where there were things like roots in the sewer. We also looked at the maintenance fault rate. So once we got through a commissioning phase, the fault rate steadied out to around about one kind of maintenance fault per 15,000 flushes. It'd be great to have some data on some traditional toilets, but unfortunately we've only monitored the new ones. Oh, and I did touch base with Simon just yesterday to see if he knew anything that I didn't in the last few months, and he says, yep, he's not had any issues downstream of these locations in the last 6 months. He's the drainage manager. Slightly conscious of time. Yeah, just wanted to flag this really. So the headline is very, very difficult to monitor downstream drainage because even if 3 guys think there's a blockage, a 4th guy might say something else. So qualitatively, it's very challenging to get this recorded, which is why I went for this traffic light system. I've only reported on 6 months of the data in the paper that we've got for this here. There is 12 months of data being gathered. So conclusions from this 6 months of data really were that there were no observations or reports that suggest these 1.5 litre flush toilets have had a detrimental effect on the drainage systems. They've generally been really popular with the drainage managers and the estates managers. There was a lot of facilitation up front to get the facilities managers aligned with switching to these, and we've had good reports from the cleaners that they're easy to manage. So we've had a broad range of usage levels, which is great. So we've had very high usage and very low usage during lockdown, and there doesn't seem to be any increase or changes in downstream blockage being reported. The water bill should be reduced by in the region of £12,000 per annum. And there is further work on this ongoing. So there's a rich data set, and we're in the process of seeking to publish a paper. And said paper has been submitted here to the Journal of Hydroinformatics. Again, just to flag my co-authors, Sarah Cottrell, Alex Newman, and David Butler. I look forward to receiving your questions, whether or not in person or by email in the future. Please do drop me a line. All the best. Thanks very much.